Chapter 14. Paris, France, 1912. It was spring in the City of Lights. Even long after dark, the air was filled with the scent of flowers in bloom and the lilting laughter of couples in love. But nowhere in Paris is more alive after dark than Montmartre. The artists who painted on the cobblestone streets in the square at the top of the hill had folded up their easels at dusk, but the street performers, the jugglers and flame eaters and mimes, were still about. On the corner in front of the grand white facade of Sacré-Cœur, a lone figure stood and caressed music of eternal beauty from a single violin. At tiny cafes in and around the square, young Parisians drank wine and debated literature and philosophy. And in an alley not far from the apartment where he had lived for 11 years, Charn ran his fingers over the supple flesh of a 19-year-old painter's model who dreamed of becoming an actress, even as he drained the blood from her veins. She writhed beneath his touch and her skin cooled. Nearby wine glasses clinked together in a loud and drunken toast, and raucous laughter followed. Charn knew he should have brought the girl home, but she was simply luscious and he could not wait. There were times when he could be almost infinitely patient, but when it came to pretty girls, Charn simply could not help himself. He slid her corpse to the ground, laying it across the rear stoop of a building. When he straightened up, he was no longer Charn. Thanks to Freya Strand, he wore the girl's face. With a slightly drunken giggle, a sound that could only have come from her throat, Charn emerged from the alley, red-faced and flustered, looking for all the world like a young girl just back from a quick grope, or even a little more. The vampire swayed her hips and smiled her smile, and ran her hands through her hair. It was all him, all the Strand. The Breezings had crafted an extraordinary trinket indeed. Charn walked across the square, stopping to run his fingers across the juggler's face, then to blow kisses to the man playing the violin. The violinist stopped the music to catch them, and many turned to see why he no longer played. What they saw was the beautiful, flirtatious girl with her high, infectious laughter. She sauntered into the cafe, and a group of young people, students perhaps, called out to her with a name Charn did not know. Regardless, he used her hands to wave back, then held up a finger, letting them know he'd be right over. She would be right over. Charn left the outdoor patio cafe and went around the corner into the shadows. Once out of sight, he wheeled his body back to its original state, felt his features changing again. Anyone who might have seen the girl go off with him had now also seen her come back without him and go on along her way. The deceit was pleasurable, but that was only part of the thrill for him. Charn simply enjoyed studying the different ways people looked at him when he wore various faces. He also enjoyed seeing his own image reflected in a mirror, his and those he adopted. That was another function of the Strand, negating the portion of the vampire's curse that prevented him from seeing himself. When he returned to his apartment, he wanted to take the dead girl's face again, to see what she looked like in the light, to know her from inside her skin. The violin music had started up again, and it seemed to swirl in and out of the back streets. Charn walked a short way down a long steep hill that led away from Montmartre and overlooked the rest of Paris. The view was exquisite by day or night. He had chosen an apartment with a window looking down from the hill for just that reason. If he stood back and away from the sunlight that streamed through it, Charn could admire the city in all its splendor. By day. At night he played, drank, and coerced. At night he hunted. A cruel smile still splayed across his features. Charn turned left, stepping over the broken patch of cobblestone and entering the narrow street where he lived. His apartment was only a short way down on the right, on the top floor. The other tenants in the building were delightful creatures, including a seemingly ancient artist and sculptor, and a pair of women he was certain were not auntie and niece as they claimed. But then, as Charn always said to himself, he was a murderer, so who was he to judge? He snickered to himself at the thought, and wondered if he ought to have them up to his room some night for cocktails. It really would be the neighborly thing to do. The front stoop was just ahead, and he was savoring the taste of the supple girl's blood in his mouth when he sensed motion on the other side of the street, across from his building. Alarmed, Charn turned and stared into the shadows between two sets of stairs. Something moved. In the moonlight, he could only make out the shape of a man, a silhouette, and where his hands should be, long, glistening talons like knives.
"Show yourself, fool!"
he demanded with false bravado.
"You are in error, attacking me upon my doorstep. Let me see the face of him whom I am about to destroy."
The figure stepped forward, out of the shadows and into the light thrown by the moon and the street lamps. He wore a hat with its brim pulled down low, and a long coat that made him little more than a cipher unless one saw him up close, as Charn now did.
"Run," he told himself. "If you want to live, then run."
But he could not. The terror was so deep within him that his legs would not obey that command. He could not move.
"Old ones, protect me,"
Charn whispered, closing his eyes part of the way, not wanting to see his fate coming, but not crazy enough to simply let it come. The demon laughed heartily, the motion shaking tiny jagged shards of ice off his face and hands. They fell to shatter on the cobblestones with a sound like muted chimes. Sparks of flame burned in the frozen sockets of his eyes, and he moved closer to Charn. And then he grew. Only a little. Not so much that a passerby would see him from behind and still not think him human. Just enough to give Charn an inkling of his true power. to confirm that the myths surrounding him were true.
Lord Skrymir,
Charn stammered.
I didn't think you ever left your stronghold now. I thought you thought very little,
Skrymir replied, his voice the sound of ice splintering when the spring thaw arrived. Then he laughed, low and deadly.
You really are a fool, Charn. Zweig might have been an annoying, rutty little creature, but he was my creature. An errant boy, perhaps, but one of my errand boys. And there's a small matter of the dagger he was carrying. A bit of history, that blade. Belonged to Darius himself, upon an age. Are you an idiot, Charn, to think I would not discover you were responsible? You, whose love of antiquities is so well known.
Skrymir had not touched him, but had moved closer as he spoke, his voice almost hypnotic. The cold that emanated from him was enough to chill the vampire's bones. At length, the demon reached out with his sharp, frozen talons and grabbed Charn's chin, puncturing his flesh as he did so. The vampire flinched, but Skrymir only grasped harder and lifted his chin so he could glare down into Charn's eyes.
That was not a rhetorical question,
the ice demon snarled.
What I mean to say is that you had not been seen in so long that no one could be entirely sure you still lived.
There are many who still believe that you are just a myth. So long have you been buried up in that stronghold of yours. Skrymir's eyes flared up with colorful flames.
I've been busy,
the demon said, rasping voice almost a whisper.
I have ambitions, Charn. They take up all my time, all of my attention. I do not appreciate being distracted from those ambitions, not even for a trip to this lovely city of yours. Do you understand me?
I swear, Skrymir, I didn't even know you were alive, Charn said quickly, expecting any moment the final blow to fall. Skrymir could easily tear his head off. Instead, the demon leaned down to glare directly at him. Even the flames in his eyes were cold as ice.
You will return what you stole,
Skrymir whispered, a deadly promise in his tone.
Yes, of course,
Charn agreed. Charn agreed quickly, sensing that his life might yet be spared.
You will swear fealty to me, and take up Zweig's work in his absence. You will also make reparations for the loss of Zweig in the form of a tribute.
I will, I swear to you, I will, Charn vowed. What can I give you as tribute? Anything. If I don't have it, I'll get it. Skrymir smiled at that and retreated a step, crossing his arms to regard Charn thoughtfully, as though considering. But even from his expression, Charn suspected that the demon had known exactly what he wanted all along.
The necklace, Skrymir told him. The necklace of the Breezings. It is mine.
Charn stiffened. The strand. He wanted the strand, the thing that gave him a reflection, that allowed him to live inside others' lives, to be seen with, and out of, other eyes. Charn pulled himself up to his full height and lifted his chin in defiance. I spent decades hunting for Freya's strand. I will give you any tribute you ask, but not this one. You'll have to kill me to get it. Skrymir's frozen brows furrowed together, tiny spikes of jagged ice jutting up above his eyes.
If you say so.
And he did. Copenhagen, Denmark, August 30th. Spike was in a foul mood. If the Nazi propaganda could be believed, the war against Britain was going well for the Germans, with England being torn by Luftwaffe bombs every night. Here in Copenhagen, the arrogant German soldiers goose-stepped along the streets in formation, and there were armed sentries everywhere. The city seemed to have been allowed to carry on its business, but only under the watchful eyes of Uncle Adolf's goons. The Danish people continued to live, but it seemed to Spike that they hesitated with every breath, fearful that it might be the last. They were all cattle, of course, Germans and Danes alike, but Spike had been born, raised, and killed in England. The demon within him was as British as if hell itself were part of the King's Empire. The idea of bombs raining all over England did not sit well with him, which might have explained all the Nazi corpses. In a second-floor office only a few blocks from Town Hall Square, an office that had housed Bernstorff Textiles before the Nazi occupation had led to Bernstorff abandoning his business, Spike interested in a lounge in high-backed leather chairs. In his hand, Spike held a German Mauser rifle. From time to time, he would lift the bolt-action rifle and aim at one of the half-dozen dead German soldiers in the room. There were no bullets in the weapon, however. He liked the way the trigger felt against his finger and knew he would be too tempted to fire it, drawing unnecessary attention. With a simple pull of his finger, Spike dry-fired the weapon at the still helmeted head of a German corporal, his uniform stained with the soldier's own blood. What the hell are we doing here, Drew? He groaned. With a sigh, he laid the rifle across his lap, then spun around in the chair to regard her. She looked beautiful in the moonlight streaming in the office window, delicate and fierce as she licked blood from her long fingers, spending perhaps a bit too much time in that operation once she had his attention. Ever watch a kitten clean its paws, Spike? She cooed suddenly, her voice so wispy and languid it seemed to come from somewhere else. as if carried into the room on moonbeams. I'm not in the mood, he said flatly. We know where this girl is supposed to be. We've checked out her place. We know she still lives there. Then how come we haven't managed to run her to ground yet? It's been 3 days. Aren't you having fun, Spike? Drew asked, hurt. I like playing with the toy soldiers. They're so serious all the time. Spike hung his head. Sometimes there was simply no talking to Drusilla. They had spent the last 3 days sleeping in the Bernsdorf Textiles office and wasted the nights by attempting to track down this final candidate for Slayerhood while entertaining and sustaining themselves by torturing and killing Nazi soldiers. While there's something to be said for that latter bit, Spike was growing frustrated with their search for the girl. During the day they had to be quiet because of the other offices in the building, and the people who still worked in them. It did not help that he wondered what would happen after they found her. He had realized even back on Mykonos that once they killed the Danish girl, they would have to return to Skrymir's Norwegian stronghold with the job not completely done. It would be madness to attempt a full-scale attack on the council headquarters in London with a complete complement of watchers and operatives there. That news had certainly thrown a spanner in the works. Skrymir could not possibly expect them to throw their lives away for him, but they couldn't very well complete their part of the agreement now, either. It could be it was time for them to kill the Slayer, but they had no word at all from the demon yet as to how they were to proceed. The last thing he wanted was to climb that mountain again and find that Skrymir still had work for them to do. But the demon did not contact them. He knew that they really had no other choice. What is it, love? Drusilla asked. What's got my man all growly? It's all bollocksed up, Spike replied, shaking his head. I mean, for you to have that necklace, Drew. After all the trouble we've gone to, Freda's strand will be yours if I have to kill the old ones themselves to get it. Drusilla made a little whimpering noise, rose from her chair with a creak of leather and springs, and floated across the office, her gown luminescent with the glow from the outside. As if on fairy's wings, she sailed to the ground before him, kneeling from Spike and laying her cheek upon his lap, eyes gazing up at him lovingly. I like pretty things, she whispered, gleaming and golden, silver and jewels as well. But I'd like that you'd kill to get them even more. My big bad Spike will get the necklace. I just know it. A present for Drew. And Drew has a present for you, too. A naughty one. Spike wanted to grunt at her again and tell her he was not in the mood. But the way she looked at him, he had meant what he said. Whatever it took to get Freya's strand from Skrymir, he was willing to do it. What might that be, pet? Spike asked. Drusilla's dreamy smile spread even wider, and then suddenly faltered. Her eyes rolled up her head and she began to quiver. Her hands fluttered at her sides and she twitched once. Then she stood and gazed at him with blank eyes, as though staring right through him. My, you are a pretty one, aren't you? Drusilla said, her tone cruel and insinuating. She walked to the office window and looked out at the night. The moon is bleeding, she said without turning. There's dancing and crying, and there's a castle. The girl has ghosts all around her. They're her family, and when she holds a sword, all their hands are upon the hilt. Drusilla hugged herself then, rocked forward on her toes, and ran her fingers up to her shoulders, and then back down again. Spike laid the rifle down and rose from his chair. She turned to meet him. What girl? He asked. The one we're after. With her eyes drifting from side to side, face tilted demurely downward, Drusilla looked lost. Then her smile slowly returned. Not that one, though I saw her too. She's a dancer, the girl we're after. We'll find her, Spike, but we aren't the only ones looking. The Slayer, that one that hurt you, with her blonde hair and whore's lips, she's coming here, coming home. Home? You mean she's from Copenhagen? Spike asked. Oh, yes. They all know her around here. All the dark things do. Spike grinned. His mood was improving. Copenhagen, Denmark, September 1st. In a beer house on Hammeriksgade, Drusilla and Spike sat close together and whispered to each other, talking about old times. Drusilla had never been one for nostalgia, never really had the memory for it, but there had been some moments between them that Spike enjoyed reliving, and she didn't really mind. The Boxer Rebellion was one. Their trip to Venice right around the turn of the century was another, when they got in Dutch with one of the demon families running the city and had to play them off one another to get out. They never talked about Angelus, though. At least not much. It was almost as though he were a ghost lingering with them, something they were aware of but did not want to give power over them by acknowledging it. He had disappeared off the face of the world, or so it seemed. It had been decades since either of them had seen him, but Drusilla was sure she would have known if he were dead. That's the problem with reminiscing. Even when they did not talk about Angelus, he haunted them. Drusilla loved Spike now, but Angelus would always be her first. Sometimes, she knew, Spike had a difficult time dealing with that. Drusilla thought of Angelus often, and she thought that Spike could sense it when she did, for he always tried to distract her then, get her mind on something else. Like now. "What do you suppose is up with that ugly bloke in Louisiana and his alligators?" he asked her in a low voice. "Pets. He's a bit lonely, that one. Makes the aloneness easier to bear, having pets about." Drusilla tilted her head to one side in thought, exposing the soft white flesh of her throat. The light from the candle on their table flickered, throwing shadows about. Absently, Spike patted the pockets of the dark suit he had appropriated from a man he had correctly judged as just about his size. He'd gotten good at it over the years. Drusilla tended to kill women whose dresses were a bit too large for her. Not that she really minded, particularly in velvet. From his left breast pocket, Spike produced a silver cigarette case. He slipped it out and pulled out a cig, then snapped the case shut and returned it to the same pocket. The cigarette perched between his lips. He bent to light it off the candle, puffing a few times to get the tip burning. He drew in a lungful of smoke as he sat back, then let it out with satisfaction. Drusilla watched the entire process, enchanted by the confidence, the arrogance that informed his every move. He was powerful, was her man. Save when it came to dealing with her. Between them, Drusilla would always have the power. Spike loved her too much to ever really be in control. It excited her, having that power over such a wild beast. But there were times when she wondered if it might not one day become tiresome. "This is taking longer than I thought," he told Drusilla. "Almost makes me wonder if we're wrong about our man." Drusilla gazed at him beneath long black lashes. Then she glanced across the beerhouse, with its many tables and the heavy stench of Danish beer and ale. There were a trio of German soldiers in full uniform in the far corner, and a fourth stood by the door, eyeing the patrons. He had come in with the others, but was apparently the lowest ranking among them, for it had fallen to him to make certain there was no trouble. But Drusilla was not looking at the soldiers. Rather, her attention was drawn to a tall, muscular man with shaggy red hair and a beard. His name, if the good-natured bellows of several other beer drinkers on hand were any indication, was Thorvald. They had spent the better part of an hour waiting for him to leave with the drunken woman to whom he whispered in a far corner. She giggled appreciatively from time to time. "You're staring, Drew," Spike warned her as he sipped at his beer. With a tiny shrug, Drusilla turned back to him. "He looks like a Viking." "Could be he was a bloody Viking," Spike reminded her. Over in the corner, Thorvald helped his lady friend on with her coat. Drusilla raised her eyebrows. Spike dropped a cigarette into his beer and rose slowly. When Thorvald and the girl slipped out the door past the lone, sober German soldier, Drusilla and Spike were perhaps 5 seconds behind them. Outside the street was dark. Somewhere not far off, Drusilla heard someone shouting in German and the pounding of many sets of leather boots on the street. Even farther away there was a short spurt of gunfire. "A spy," she thought. "Or just someone who said something they shouldn't have." Not that it mattered. It was hardly her concern. Right now their only interest was in Thorvald, the first vampire they had located in Copenhagen. Drusilla kept her arm around Spike, and they stopped to kiss and caress from time to time as they walked the streets. But always they stayed aware of Thorvald's presence and location. When he disappeared, they moved swiftly, specters in the shadows. For the most part, vampires moved like human beings to avoid undue suspicions of their true nature. But at that moment, as they hurried to determine where Thorvald had taken his conquest, any onlooker would have seen their speed and nimbleness and known they were something other than human. Vampires. Demons. The people of Copenhagen, however, would hardly have been surprised. They were growing quite familiar with the idea of demons in the mist. It was a narrow alleyway off the road that would allow deliveries to the butcher shop around the back. Drusilla and Spike kept close to the walls of the alley as they traveled to the back of the shop. In the darkened area behind it, they found Thorvald feasting on the girl. There was blood all over his mouth and beard. "Ooh, he's quite sloppy, isn't he, Spike?" Drusilla asked, tone rife with her disapproval. Thorvald looked up at them, down at the girl, then dropped her and bolted. They caught him a moment later. With a ferocious growl, he struggled as together they drove him against the back of the building. His nose broke where it splayed against the brick. He bucked. Thorvald was strong and very large, and he managed to throw both of them off. Spike leaped back, ready to go at him again. But Drusilla only took one step away. With blood on his lips and staining his beard, he looked like an animal as he lunged at her. But Drusilla was stronger than she looked. She grabbed his arm, fitted down and under and behind him, then snapped it up with a single tug. Thorvald roared his pain before Spike was able to dive at him and clap a hand over his mouth. "Another sound, and the Nazis will be on to us," Drusilla chided him, as if he were a badly behaved little boy. She snarled at the big vampire in disgust. "Is that what you want?" "Looks like you've got a nice setup here," Spike added. "No reason to change that if you cooperate." Though there was hatred in Thorvald's eyes, there was logic as well. Spike took his hand away from the bloody mouth.
"What do you want?"
Thorvald demanded in passable English.
"The world,"
Drusilla told him.
"every bite."
"Who's the big noise around here?" Spike asked. "Cock of the walk. The boss. Thorvald shrugged.
Used to be Gorm. Everybody knows that.
And what happened to Gorm, my darling? Drusilla asked.
The Slayer got him,
the red-bearded vampire replied. He frowned and studied them.
Who are you?
Meet the new boss, Spike said happily. Thorvald seemed about to argue when Drusilla wrenched his arm back again. He bit right through his lower lip, trying not to scream. Drusilla nodded her approval. You're a tough one, all right, she said. Think we may have use for you. Drusilla moved closer to Thorvald then, pressing her body against him from behind. Even as she did that, she kept hurting him. Now then, my sloppy boy, she whispered, it's time to tell us everything there is to know about your little Slayer. She's coming home, you see, and we want to have a bit of a party for her when she gets here. Copenhagen, Denmark, September 3rd. Whatever joy the German occupation siphoned from the city, they had not managed to steal it all. There was still pleasure to be found in art and in elegance, and both were in great supply at the Royal Theatre. Danish nobles and members of Parliament ignored the hard truth of the times, that their pride and dreams had been taken from them. They sat in their boxes at the theatre, the men grand and dignified in their best suits, and the women resplendent in their fairy-tale gowns. The orchestra played the music of angels, and on the stage, like the seraphim themselves, the dancers performed a ballet that offered the audience a brief escape from their captivity. Only the soldiers strategically scattered throughout the theatre, weapons at the ready, shattered the illusion. Something almost mournful about the proceedings here, don't you think? Spike asked. They sat in a box near the back of the theatre, dressed in finery still warm from the flesh of the couple they had killed for it. I think they're lovely, Drusilla purred, eyes riveted to the dancers upon the stage, reacting with little oohs and giggles and near-side scoldings as the ballet unfolded. That one's like a little doll. Could I have a dolly like that, Spike? You must find me one. Spike leaned backward in his chair and slipped an arm around behind Drusilla, caressing the back of her neck. He watched the girl who had gotten Drusilla's attention, a live little thing not more than 16. The dancer's name was Ilza Skovgard, and it was she they had come to the theatre to see. You'll have your dolly, Drew. As soon as we settle down in one place long enough, I'll have a nice little ballet dancer made for you, he promised. Then a devilish smile blossomed on his chiseled features. Till then, though, what do you think about playing with the real thing for a bit?